As Abraham settled near the oaks of Mamre, a significant and mysterious encounter awaited him. Genesis 18 introduces a moment of divine visitation, where three men appeared before Abraham. Although these visitors initially seemed like ordinary travelers, their true identities and purpose would soon be revealed, marking a pivotal moment in Abraham's relationship with God and in the history of Sodom and Gomorrah. One hot day, as Abraham sat at the entrance of his tent, he looked up and saw three men standing nearby. Recognizing their importance, Abraham hurried to meet them and offered the hospitality of his home. He invited them to rest under the shade of the trees, wash their feet, and enjoy a meal. As a gesture of respect and generosity, Abraham prepared a feast of bread, curds, milk, and a choice calf. While the text initially describes them as three men, it becomes clear that one of them is identified as the Lord, and the other two are angels. This moment marked a divine visitation, where God himself and two of his messengers came to visit Abraham. During the meal, the Lord spoke to Abraham, asking about Sarah. The mention of her name indicated that this was not an ordinary visit. The Lord reaffirmed the promise that Sarah would bear a son, specifying that it would happen by the same time the following year. Upon hearing this from the tent, Sarah laughed to herself in disbelief. She thought of her and Abraham's old age, and it seemed impossible. The Lord, knowing her thoughts, asked Abraham why Sarah laughed, reminding them that nothing is too difficult for him. "Is anything too hard for the Lord?" the visitor asked, revealing his divine nature. Sarah, frightened, denied that she laughed, but the Lord simply replied, "No, but you did laugh." This brief exchange highlighted both God's omniscience and his unwavering promise. After the meal and the reaffirmation of the promise, the three visitors rose to leave and set out toward Sodom. As they did, the Lord shared with Abraham his intention to investigate the outcry against Sodom and Gomorrah. The city's wickedness had reached a peak, and God was preparing to bring judgment upon them. In an extraordinary moment, the Lord decided to reveal his plan to Abraham. God recognized Abraham's future role as the father of a great nation and the one who would teach his descendants to follow God's ways. Because of this, he chose to confide in Abraham about the impending judgment. As the two angels continued toward Sodom, Abraham remained standing before the Lord. With humility and boldness, Abraham approached God and began to intercede on behalf of the city. He asked a series of questions, seeking assurance that God's judgment would be tempered by his mercy. Abraham's first plea was for God to spare the city if 50 righteous people could be found within it. The Lord agreed, saying that if 50 righteous were found, he would spare the entire city for their sake. Encouraged by God's response, Abraham continued to lower the number, asking if God would spare the city for 45, then 40, then 30, and then 20. Each time, God agreed. Finally, Abraham pleaded, "Suppose 10 are found there?" And the Lord responded, "For the sake of 10, I will not destroy it." With that, the conversation ended, and the Lord departed, leaving Abraham to return to his place. Applications. The importance of hospitality and generosity. Abraham's immediate and generous hospitality toward the three visitors demonstrates the value of welcoming others, even strangers, with kindness and respect. This act of hospitality became the setting for a significant divine encounter. This application encourages us to cultivate a spirit of generosity and openness in our interactions, recognizing that serving others can be an opportunity to encounter God's presence and purpose. It teaches us that simple acts of kindness can lead to profound blessings and insights. Trusting in God's promises, no matter how improbable. Sarah's initial reaction of laughter when she heard the promise of bearing a son highlights the human tendency to doubt when faced with seemingly impossible situations. God's response, "Is anything too hard for the Lord?" is a reminder that His power is limitless. This application calls us to trust in God's promises, even when circumstances make them appear unattainable. It encourages us to hold on to faith, understanding that God's word is true and that He is capable of fulfilling His promises, no matter the odds. God's omniscience and compassion. The Lord's awareness of Sarah's private laughter and unspoken doubts reveals His complete knowledge of human thoughts and emotions. This application teaches us that God is not only aware of our outward actions, but also understands our inner struggles and doubts. It reassures us that we can bring our uncertainties and fears to Him, knowing that He sees and understands us fully. God's response to Sarah was not one of anger, but of reaffirmation, showing that His compassion extends even when our faith wavers. Intercession and advocacy for others. Abraham's bold and persistent intercession for Sodom exemplifies the power and importance of praying on behalf of others. His conversation with God reflects a balance of humility and confidence, showing that God welcomes heartfelt petitions. This application inspires us to stand in the gap for others, praying for mercy and seeking God's intervention in their lives. It teaches that intercession is an act of love and concern, one that can influence outcomes and reflect God's desire for justice, tempered with mercy. God's willingness to listen and be merciful. The narrative demonstrates that God is not only just, but also deeply merciful. His willingness to spare Sodom for the sake of even 10 righteous people highlights His readiness to show compassion. This application encourages us to understand that God's heart leans toward mercy, and that He values righteousness in the midst of wickedness. It motivates us to live as beacons of righteousness and to seek ways to influence our communities positively, knowing that God's mercy can extend through the presence of even a few faithful individuals.